What is up, everyone? Much to my surprise, there is a lunch break. So, just to entertain you a little bit, we're going to resume with our analysis desk. Dwee not joining us because he decided to go get food.
Yeah. So, what do you think of that last match?
It was pretty. I mean, a game with Dr. Fidget in it is pretty much always entertaining. I did not expect to see Seismitoad today, but as we've seen in the past, most of the things that I don't expect to see on stream end up coming on stream.
I never thought I'd see Seismitoad again with Mega Swampert out there with Swift Swim. It's a Pokemon with the same typing, but there we go.
Yeah, if he goes far enough, we'll have to just ask him. I wonder what the reasoning was behind that.
I guess just special. There's so much Intimidate around. There's so much Intimidate around, and you can see how different things have been around that. He didn't have very much physical. He had Kangaskhan, but then after that, you're looking at Zapdos and Pelipper and Seismitoad all hitting totally specially.
And Swampert not taking that Mega Slot, it's pretty handy. Like, allows you to use Kangaskhan or really whatever else you want. Like, Metagross could have easily been there.
And then you look at the other side. James went with Milotic, has all this Intimidate everywhere, and so Milotic's a good kind of counter call to that. But then you run up against something that just doesn't have Intimidate on the roster. Suddenly, like, Milotic is not all that valuable. Shows up, tries to get a little bit done in game one, takes a Thunderbolt, and you move on.
Story's written there.
Yeah, so I think definitely, like, continuing our Incineroar theme, we're sort of seeing the ways that all of the players we've been watching have, like, adapted to that. Like, the double special Rain that wasn't Ludicolo. Like, it also resisted fire moves, and then, like, had the spread Muddy Water. And then we also have our, like, the Melodic on the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Alberto, in your interview with him, talked about how he was forced to totally change his team because of Incineroar coming around.
Yeah.
So that's another match that was obviously heavily impacted.
I'm glad you brought up Alberto. I think my smart money pick seems to be working so far, and he's not repeating Costa Mesa. And I think a big part of that is this metagame shift. Going into SoCal, it seemed that Alberto didn't even really care too much that it was his home regional. It's just another tournament. And he brought in his team from Sydney. There wasn't really big adjustments there. He walked in with, like, a very comfortable pick, but not something that was, like, really revitalized or anything. This is the complete opposite because such a large shift in Incineroar forces him to completely change it up. And because Alberto's making faces at me right now while I'm explaining this, because he had to go with a completely different team and just a new metagame outlook, you're really seeing that performance and that change in sort of dominance, really. His performance so far in Portland, far stronger than in Costa Mesa.
I think Gengar is really cool to see. It's not something we saw at all in Costa Mesa.
Yeah.
We talked about that in kind of our wrap-up of that tournament, that it had pretty much dropped off.
Yeah.
Now we see Alberto back with it, using that Shadow Tag. Had pairs of 2 fake-outs there to support with it. That really makes that Shadow Tag potent. Still haven't seen any other Gengar, though. It's the only one so far.
I mean, maybe that shows that you and I are on the same, like, mental competitive level as Alberto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we recognize that Gengar is very good.
Keep believing that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I will.
I mean, I think that Shadow Tag is something that benefits a huge amount from there being a lot of Intimidate in the game. Like, both because you can trap people and then cycle your Intimidates, and also because you get to stop your opponent.
Yeah.
Like, I think Shadow Tag became twice as valuable with the release.
Oh, absolutely. And that creates another interesting thing to note here. We have not seen on stream any Mega Manectric, and Mega Manectric is one of, like, very nice Intimidate users that can get around that Shadow Tag problem because they always have Volt Switch.
Always.
Yeah, maybe just with Incineroar filling that gap of the second or maybe now first Intimidator in the metagame, you don't need Manectric quite as much, and so we see it dropping off. We did see Gothitelle earlier. We talked about Shadow Tag. Of course, Gothitelle's the other big Shadow Tag user. Also, the only type of team that really featured Incineroar before it got Intimidate were those Gothitelle, Mawile, Incineroar teams. And so I was interested to see how much more of that we would see now that you can take just the team that already existed and add Intimidate to it. Yeah,
I mean, I thought that it makes perfect sense there to me that it's like, oh, well, this team is already very good, but now this has Intimidate, even better. I'm going to use it. Like, I'm surprised we haven't seen that dedicated level of it.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that a lot of players haven't just grabbed old Incineroar teams and added them, because it's not just a simple addition of I get to use Incineroar, it's also my opponent gets to use Incineroar.
Right.
And then also, like, those teams were built around Incineroar not needing Intimidate, and so it was fulfilling, like, a different role, and now, like, it can do more, so why like, limit the rest of your team by pretending Incineroar can only do what it did before?
And that's a good point, because, like, Mawile and Gothitelle, they don't like Incineroar that much.
No, not at all.
Blitzes and knockoffs, and then Intimidate up against Mawile, not great for that team. So
yeah, absolutely.
Even if it's helped your own, like you said, having to come up against it, not so great.
Yeah. I mean, in the grander scheme of things, I'm more surprised at the lack of the Manectric Snorlax setups, because even post-Incineroar release, you saw a lot of them in Charlotte. So maybe it's just an oversaturation thing. Maybe it's the sort of eccentric nature of the Northwestern player base. You always do see some interesting stuff up here. But it's pretty surprising to me that not even like one person I've talked to so far seems to have it.
Well, I think we maybe haven't sampled everyone just yet.
Yeah, probably.
I know, like, there's a player or two. Right?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't spoken to anyone that had it.
I mean, I know of one.
Okay, cool. I mean, yeah, fine. Cool.
We'll see it later.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other teams that have impressed you so far in the day?
Impressed?
Yeah.
Well, that's a big word.
Oh.
I mean, I thought Alberto's team was really cool. I personally love the combination of Mega Gengar Raichu. I think that it has, I mean, at this point, it has pretty long-standing success in VGC. You first saw it win regionals in the 2014 format. It was able to adapt to the 2016 format, win Worlds, and you're seeing it do pretty well here today.
Yeah, just Pokemon that do well together.
Yeah.
Give you a lot of flexibility and support for that Shadow Tag with Encore that can really punish any small mistake your opponent makes.
Right.
You can just open up.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see some more matches from Alberto later on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at this point, ooh, you know what? I'm not going to say what I just said. I'm not going to curse him. The smart money's on my side. Let's just keep the ball rolling here.
Smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I heard like rumors about some other interesting things, but I don't think the teams are doing quite well enough to mention here yet. But like, there might be a cool stack attack strategy we get to see later.
Oh, I hope so.
I'm a big Stack Attacker fan.
Yeah, well, Len did focus on that quite a bit when the format was
it's so much
up.
fun. You just
Seems pretty cool.
Stacking attacks, gyro
Stacking
volley.
attacks, you attack and you stacks, and it all just comes together and blended very nicely.
Yeah, the main trick room we've seen so far, though, was Gardevoir, not
Yeah.
any of these really actual slow.
Well,
Pokemon
I mean,
that-
you did see modes. You saw the Cresselia and Dimitri, and you saw the Gothitelle from Scott. You're seeing different applications, but I agree the most successful one we've seen is the Gardevoir.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a classic 2015 thing.
Yeah.
Despite Gardevoir's high speed, decided to dip down, go Trick Room, and then just throw as many Hyper Voices out as you can.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's so easy to press that button. There's very little punish to spread moves, I think.
And I think it would be really surprising if we didn't see Guard continue to climb, just with
I agree.
Incineroar being such amazing support for it. Like,
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier that Lele Incineroar was kind of okay despite the fake out thing.
Right.
But Gardevoir is basically just like, if you'll indulge me here, it's fairy type Lele rather than
Oh,
psychic type
yeah,
Lele.
yeah, 100%.
I think it's also when you have all these Intimidate cycles, you see lots of Pokemon coming in and out, just having very kind of vanilla spread move damage.
Yeah.
You're not having to spend less. You're not having to guess exactly what's going to be in what slot
Yeah.
at what point. You can just click Hyper Voice. I don't care if that thing volt switches out to a different Intimidator. U-turns out. If we see a double switch here, I know I'm going to get some valuable damage, even if it's resisted.
Yeah, if I were playing in this tournament, I would have brought Gardevoir.
Yeah?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, to the same sort of degree, even though it's not as strong, Len, you and I the other day talked about how we thought Hyper Voice Salamence sounded very good. And it does a lot of this, I mean, not to the same degree of strength, but it provides the sort of speed and spread, very safe damage that makes a lot of sense in a format where people want to position so much with their Intimidates.
Yeah, if you're constantly chipping every Incineroar that comes in, every Landorus that comes in, eventually you can just outspeed and KO them with Salamence.
Absolutely. And I don't think we've even seen Salamence so far.
No, I mean, this metagame is so wide open that even we've seen 8 teams so far right on stream.
Yeah.
It's just not enough sample size to see everything because there are so many options.
Freaking stats. Just getting in the way of all the things that I say.
That's my major.
Well, then you should know quite a bit that the sample sizes are indeed not enough. They are insufficient.
But I think that's also an interesting point, just like that there was that small drop in power for Mence and Guard. And I think it's interesting to see how, I don't think that necessarily makes them non-viable, but it definitely discourages players from using them. Like when I see a Pokemon got nerfed a little bit, I say, oh, well, I don't want to use that anymore because it's not as cool as it once was.
Right.
But I think just sort of like being patient enough to say, well, they're still pretty strong, and then to use them anyways is a really like interesting thing to do for strategy.
Yeah, I think that effect also kind of lessens over the course of the season, especially in the first few weeks of a season. If something just got buffed, you're going to see a ton of that. If something just got nerfed, you're going to see less. And as the season wears on, people kind of drift back to what actually works.
Yeah, the things that were good in the first place.
And so, yeah, we could be seeing that happening now with things like Gardevoir.
I mean, yeah, you do have, I mean, the sample size thing is going to keep being in the way of everything that I say. But we did only see one Metagross on stream. Compared to just a few weeks ago where it seemed like Metagross was everywhere. I mean, it was probably one of the biggest complaints about this format just pretty recently until Incineroar was released with its hidden ability. And Incineroar does play a role there, but Metagross compared to the XY and the Auras games, very easy to spot and see, oh, like, maybe it didn't get a ton of buffs. I mean, its only real buff was Stomping Tantrum directly.
That's so big.
Exactly, and it is huge.
Too.
Yeah.
Well,
no, that's what I meant by directly, because then when you get to all these like other factors, we're like, oh well, these fairy types are very good, and Metagross beats them. Psychic Terrain is very good, and it gives me my own Tapu, and now I get to use it with Metagross. But as the season's waning on, just as you said, it's kind of becoming like, oh well, there were definitely reasons that Metagross didn't see this huge success in 2015. Even though, I mean, plenty of factors are different.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, was any Pokemon individually hurt as much as Metagross by Incineroar? I mean, doesn't like the Intimidate, the Fake Out's not great for it, and then both stabs are hitting Metagross hard. Scrafty.
Well,
Scrafty kind of indirectly hurt just because it's been totally replaced. We did see one today, though.
Yeah, we did. But, I mean, I think Scrafty has its role still, of course, but there are very easy, like very simple reasons to point out, like, oh, that's why you don't use Scrafty. It's like, oh, Dazzling Gleam, okay, great. Because that's also a spread move that's pretty safe to throw out. And a lot of Pokemon don't really care about it, but when Scrafty does, it kind of removes a lot of your positioning options.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I was thinking, like, I guess a lot of Steels have suffered a bunch from Incineroar being introduced, so maybe that's, like, another part of the Gardevoir rise.
Oh, absolutely,
sure, yeah.
I wonder if there's other things that we'll see sort of changing as we see, like, Aegislash isn't quite as safe to use.
Right.
Although I guess it still has the King's Shield play. And then, like, poor Ferrothorn is just, like, almost impossible to play. And, like, that was a lot of Alberto rethinking things was normally you see him going into tournaments with that bulky Steel type with Leech Seed.
Oh,
like
yeah. That is, like, an Alberto special at this point.
And he can't do that anymore as easily. He has to, like, figure out counterplays to Incineroar.
Right.
And so then when you start talking about this Pokemon being worse, you just look at like the next, what that causes, what the ripple effect is. If Ferrothorn is much less viable, maybe Rain is much more viable. Maybe Aegislash being gone means you can use things that otherwise would have a lot of difficulty with Aegislash more comfortably.
I mean, I think we've seen a lot of that on stream today. You saw Sam used Rain very well. I think Rain was pretty excellent a call coming into this, and for pretty much the very simple reason, like, Incineroar is fire, Rain is water. I'm using that. Like, that is going to get you pretty far here. And a lot of people, it doesn't seem are running Rain. Again, I'm going to mention this every time now. Sample size. Oh, no, we're going to drill this in. Sample size. I've talked to a lot of people that are not only not playing Rain, but absolutely did not expect Rain at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. The Rain's always something that's very matchup dependent. It's hard to just kind of play a neutral game when you have Rain. You've got to be thinking about very specific matchup problems and matchup answers that you have. I mean, you talk about like Ferrothorn. Sam doesn't have much answer on his team other than Chandelure, which just destroys it. And so that's kind of a matchup dependent Pokemon that he would need in certain situations. And then it's kind of hard to play around for him, I guess, because he would be worrying about his Rain, weakening his own fire attacks from Chandelure. Chandelure is a Pokemon with a lot of weaknesses you've got to worry about all the time. So you can get into those very matchup-specific positions that make you play very differently.
Right.
But I think that's a very good point, though, that Rain is like way stronger right now because the number 1 and number 2 slots are things that hurt physical attacks and are weak to water.
Yeah. I mean, if I were playing in this tournament, I don't know if I said this to I've said this to you guys at least individually. I like a lot Rain and Azumarill, not necessarily together, but that's why I like Scott's team a lot earlier in the day. It was like a very offensive with a trapping option Azumarill team. So I do expect him to do very well. I think it's a team that makes a ton of sense in this format. I mean, even Charizard X is like, oh, it's Incineroar. Like, okay, cool. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I would be surprised to see more Azumarill. I think its matchups are pretty good.
Yeah.
What I really want to see is like one Empoleon. I feel like this isn't going to happen, but like because it's a Steel that isn't weak to Incineroar.
Need to get Dwee back to this desk.
Yeah, where did he go?
He's a big Empoleon fan.
It has good synergy with Landorus.
Probably sneezing or something right now.
Does have to worry about big earthquakes from Landorus all the time, and all the electric attacks.
There'll be one someday.
You can mean, electric attacks Raichu. You've
yeah,
seen
I mean,
it.
you basically never have to worry
Yeah.
about electric attack again once you throw lightning around there. You
Just be careful about that whole ground business. I mean, it's not like we saw Earthquake sweep a team today or anything on stream.
In all seriousness, though, I think like there will be a hunt to find steals that can work around Incineroar.
Oh, totally.
And maybe that just means Aegislash that plays carefully with King's Shield and makes it risky to target the Aegislash. But I think there's got to be some sort of adjustment to Incineroar because steals are still important.
Oh, absolutely. I think probably as long as Pokemon exists, which is going to be forever, steals are going to be important for the end of time.
I feel like Incineroar sometimes picks up that role that was once a steel type, so there might we might not see quite as much because Incineroar hurts steals and replaces steals.
Right.
But I think there's got to be some way to get steals back in the metagame.
You know what's a steel that isn't weak to Flare Blitz?
I think I got the read here.
Stack Attacka.
Not what I was going. I was going for Heatran.
There's another one, yeah. Pretty good matchups against Incineroar.
Gardevoir.
Power it.
I mean, just the low kick option can still hurt both
Yeah.
of them as well.
Well, yeah,
Incineroar has such good coverage, and it's just so hard to find ways to beat it easily.
For sure. Well, we are almost through our lunch break. We're going to take a quick break for ourselves and be back with round 5.